Welcome to the White Sox REKAP Podcast. I'm Ryan McGuffey. I had a chance to sit down with the new skipper of the Chicago White Sox, Will Venable, as he was introduced to the media on Friday at Guaranteed Rate Field. Amongst many of the questions I asked him is, why now? Why the White Sox? What type of personality are you looking for in the coaching staff, on the roster? And that time he went 4 for 4 at Guaranteed Rate Field. That and much more in an exclusive sit-down with the White Sox manager, Will Venable, right now on the White Sox REKAP Podcast. There's 30 of these jobs, obviously. But you've been a candidate for jobs in the past, and I had Boch on the podcast earlier this week, and of course, other people said, they heard him talk, and he was borderline emotional for sure. And I asked him the same question, when are you ready, and why are you ready now with a team that was 41 wins a year ago? Why is this the time for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, number one, to your point about being around Bochy, the last couple of years with him and the way he's included me in, the day-to-day of what that job looks like with, everything from lineup construction to in-game decisions to how he goes about creating an environment or holding guys accountable, has really set me up to where I feel like I'm ready for this. And then on the other side of it, this job in particular, just looking at the opportunity when I was asked if I wanted to interview, on the surface, it's Chicago, which is a city that I've been in and I love and my family loves. I know a little bit about Getsy from before, but then you add his reputation, and then being on the other side and playing this team and knowing that they went through some tough times and still continue to compete and fight like they did and have some tough games against us when I was with the Rangers, really made it an easy call as far as accepting the interview. And then just what I learned about the organization throughout the interview process just gave me confirmation that this was the right time and the right fit for me.
Yeah, so on the surface you see 41 and 121, but what's exciting for you to come into an organization that is at the true ground floor of a rebuild and have changed all of the entire front office, have changed the way they're doing R&D, and to have you now as part of that process as the on-the-field manager, and that you guys are all pulling from the same rope and heading forward, does that line up with kind of, your goals for being a big league manager?
Yeah, there's a ton of appeal to that, to be part of, the effort and the foundation that's being laid here. I know all of these jobs look a little bit different, and organizations are at different points in that development. But this type of work that's required for this with these type of people is what makes it really attractive to me. All
right, so not including family, first call that you received after you got this job, who was it and what was that like?
First call I received, honestly, there's been
maybe a text.
There's been so many, and they all kind of came in at once the news broke. But probably from Nick Hundley and Chris Young, who were there in Texas, and some of my closest friends, and I mentioned them, I consider them family. They've just been so supportive throughout this whole thing, and were some of the first to reach out, and kind of some of the first conversations I had when I took the job.
I did a little research on this and was trying to think of first-time managers and their mentors prior to taking a job, and we know everybody's been asking you about Boch and Alex Cora and Theo and Madden. But I can't think of one that's had those type of mentors along the way to get this job. Not necessarily what you took from them, but did you kind of pinch yourself along the way to know that you're working with Hall of Famer here, and that groomed you to be in this position now?
Every step of the way, and in every interaction, I've always just appreciated the fact that I'm being exposed to some pretty cool guys that have done some special things, and even in my playing career, being around amazing players and amazing coaches and managers, this whole thing has been special for me, and I've taken a little bit from every one of them, and hope that it makes me better.
How does personality impact how you want to build a coaching staff and how you guys want to build a roster? Because as you know, you guys are, in a baseball clubhouse, you're together with these people more than you are with your own families. And there's a fine line between maybe too much personality and not enough. So when you think about building a coaching staff and having input on a roster, what type of personality do you want the coaching staff and the clubhouse to have?
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing about a clubhouse is that all the personalities are going to be different, and it's really about how they work together, and that's what we want to create, right? An environment where everyone feels like they can come and be themselves, where they have autonomy in how they build their day, but there's also structure and expectations for what they do, and that we have the type of relationships between each other where we can hold each other accountable and really exchange that sensitive information, that important information that we know like helps build us closer as a group. So not one type of personality, but definitely someone who's a good teammate.
When you look at the gritty players in the fan base, you mentioned those in your introductory Zoom. What is, I think there's a personality of like a blue collar fan base here, but saying that a guy can be gritty or is gritty is different from that actually happening. How do you develop that? And I know the fan base was a big part of you, at least in your press conference when you were on the Zoom, because this fan base is more than eager right now to flip the script and get back to their winning ways, but also kind of embodying who they are on the field.
Yeah, I don't think that that's something that, as a manager, you coach up, I think that that's innate in the players, and that it's really on us to find those guys and to go out there and push them to be themselves and to go out there and continue to fight and continue to grind. And you just envision what that looks like and running down the line and getting after a ball or getting in the box and just choking up a little bit. I mean, we know what it looks like, and ultimately that's up to them to get there and for us to push them there.
When you manage this group that you're going to manage here in a couple of months, they can relate to watching you when they were growing up. How important is that for you to be able to go to a guy who might be in an 0 for 20 or even a 10 for 20 and manage the ebbs and flows of the everyday, whether a guy has not hit his potential yet or has hit his all-star potential, and that you're able to kind of be like, hey man, I know what you're going through, keep grinding, and I got your back?
Yeah, I think it's really important, to understand the nuance of that and the timing of communication and the sensitivity to the fact that this is a really hard job, and that baseball throws a lot at you, that sometimes you need someone to pick you up. Sometimes you don't need anybody to say anything at all, and then sometimes you need someone to give you a kick in the pants a little bit. And I think my experience and the experience of our staff is unique in the sense that we know what that looks like and that we want to be aggressive in how we approach those things.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question about success. First one is just, we know we're going to table World Series, okay, but what does short-term success, not even 2025, what does short-term success look like for you at this organization?
Certainly wins and losses matter. We understand that. We also understand that's we're not going to fix this thing and get to where we want to be overnight. And I think that in the very short term, being able to look back on this year and be able to say, hey, we created an environment where these guys were able to be at their best is certainly huge. That we created, that continue to build and develop the systems and the processes that we know are going to help us this year, but also carry us into the future, and then that we help players get better. I think that's going to be a huge measure of success for us, and in the short term, I think those are the things that really come to mind.
And what about long term? I mean, you don't take these jobs thinking I'm on a 3 or 4 or 5 year deal. You're thinking like, you want to be a 20-year guy and build statues. So what does long-term success look like for you as a manager?
I don't know. I'm focused on like today and right now, and I know that if we continue to focus on that and do the right things to build the foundation, that we're gonna get there, and I'm extremely confident in that. But we don't jump to that spot by focusing on that on then. It really is about now and the things that we need to do to execute, being really good at building this for right now.
Last couple for you. You obviously don't have a history of playing here as a Chicago White Sox, but do you have a favorite White Sox memory, whether it's growing up when your dad was in the game, obviously, or as a player that you're like, oh yeah, I remember that about the White Sox?
For sure, it was here and facing Chris Sale. Which, and I had Chris in Boston, and I told him it was one of the great achievements of my life to face him because he was just so good and so dominant. And as a lefty hitter, I wanted to see what it looked like. And yeah, it didn't go well for me, but I was happy to have the opportunity, and will never forget facing Chris Sale.
You had 8 4-hit games in your career. So I'm guessing the next night was the night you had one right here. I don't even know if you remember. You were 4 for 4 with a couple of doubles and RBIs. Was that? I mean, that's the one that stood out. I thought you were actually going there with Sale, but to have a 4-hit game here certainly has to stand out. But when you think about standing on the field here as a manager, and certainly family clearly is very important to you. You called out everybody in your press conference. What will be going through your mind? And I don't even know if it's possible to think about when they do the flyover and you exchange the lineup cards for the first time here in Chicago. Who will be the first person you're thinking of, and what will be running through your mind as a manager of the Chicago White Sox?
That time of games, especially early on in the season, it was really a time where I reflect on family stuff and people that have helped me, some people that aren't here anymore, and kind of tap into them and check in with them. And so that's something that I know that I'll think about. And some people that I lost this year that I wish were going to be able to see me in this role, when I know that it'll be really proud of me. So that I know for sure will be something that goes through my mind.
Best of luck, Will. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Really good stuff right there from White Sox manager Will Venable. Look forward to seeing what's to come on the South Side. I thank Will Venable for the sit down, and I thank all of you for watching and listening to this edition of the White Sox Recap Podcast here on the Recap Network.